Have you ever wondered that the person that you're looking at through your screen during your Zoom meetings maybe is actually the person that you think he or she is? Have you ever wondered that for Threat Talks? Well, that's the topic for today, where we dive deep into deepfakes.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
With me today, my guest is Yuri Wit, who is a SOC analyst here at Ontoit, at the SOC floor where we're standing now. And he knows all about deepfakes. So welcome, Yuri.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we dive deep into the deepfakes, what do we see as a deepfake? What is the scope?
Generally, when we're talking about deepfakes, we're talking about using generative AI to either fake the identity or some characteristics of a person into somebody else's. Good example is, of course, photoshopping somebody's face into somebody else's face, or copying over somebody's identity, like somebody's voice, over a voicemail. That's the most generic sense of a deepfake.
Okay, and now we see also the deepfakes where it's not only a photo, but also video.
Yeah, with the rise of, the giant bubble of generative AI that we have seen recently, we've started to see AI being used to deepfake actual videos of people that look identical to the real thing. Usually when we see that on like Hollywood actors that are being deepfaked over somebody else's face, pretending to be a celebrity to either gain a following online or say incriminating things, usually to get a reaction out of it. But more recently, we've also started seeing it being used by threat actors in the cybersecurity space.
Okay, before we go there, I can recall indeed that there was this, I believe it was a Bitcoin campaign, where famous actors said that I should really invest in Bitcoin or any other coin.
Yeah.
That's a kind of deepfake then, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, still today, you can probably go onto Twitter, or X as it is now called, and see Elon Musk shilling some cryptocurrency looking like the actual Elon Musk, sounding like him, but instead it's just some generated video.
Okay, and you said that these deepfakes, and then especially the video ones, are now more and more used in by criminal actors. How does that work?
Now that we're starting to see generative AI really kick off in the commercial space, the threat actors are following suit right behind them. And as more of these tools become widely available, it becomes much easier for just a regular threat actor to generate their own deepfakes based on very short input material. Like a simple photo from somebody's LinkedIn profile could already be used to do a deepfake of that person in video format.
So for one single photo is enough to generate a video of a person nowadays. That's quite scary.
It is. Now with all AI, the larger your data set, or the larger and the more quality your data set is, the better the quality of the deepfake is, of course. But a lot of, for example, voice cloning, voice deepfaking can be done with as little as 30 seconds of somebody's voice. Even with interference of other sounds through the clip, could still be used to get a pretty reliable output of that person's fake voice.
And that can also be done real time, or is it only post? So
no,
I need
that's
to
real time.
Okay, so it is possible that I can call you and then sound like your colleague. I'm your colleague, but a SOC colleague, or any other colleague, or your boss. Okay,
exactly.
And then it makes sense. So let's say if I want to do it, I'm not sure about the quality, but maybe you can do it that you say, okay, but I'm now in a very busy area. Maybe I'm at the airport or something else, so that even if the real-time conversion isn't as good as supposed, so that when it's completely clear that you can hear it, then maybe the environment can help to make it better, that they will fall for it.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's and do you have some example? Because I think this is now available, like you said. Do we have some examples of actual cybercrime that's happened with it?
Yeah, a very good example is from 2019. So that's quite early already. where the Wall Street Journal posted a story about a company being extorted out of 200,000 euros by having the threat actors deepfake the voice of the CEO of its parent company, saying that they needed a wire transfer to a third-party supplier, creating a lot of urgency in the request for the wire transfer, and the transfer went through. The CEO of the daughter company approved it, thinking that they would be reimbursed because it was the CEO telling them to do the wire transfer. But only after that money was sent through multiple other accounts that they realized that it was not the CEO.
And do we know if that, because this was already back in 2019, was that already real time, or was that?
That was real time.
Okay, so we can only imagine how good it is now,
Yes.
as we are 6 years later. So okay, that's quite. So we need some. Well, we'll come to that, but we need some extra measures in place then.
Yeah.
Do you have some other examples?
Not specifically targeting a specific company, but deepfaking is also being used to create fraudulent identities for people to sign up for services like cryptocurrency exchanges. Normally, a cryptocurrency exchange would require a proof of identity, like a legal document, a passport or something, combined with a video feed of their webcam to prove that they are the person who they say they are. And in 2021, there was a threat actor that was selling a tool that could deepfake not only a legal document like a passport, but then also provide a real-time video feed of an attacker's webcam deepfaked with the fake identity also used in the passport.
I can remember indeed that back in the days when I was playing around with some of the crypto just to figure out how it works, what it was, that once I applied to a crypto exchange and signed up, that I had to show my passport and then look in the camera and move my head to left and to right. But that's okay, and that can be done then by deepfake.
Yeah,
that's a great way for the attackers to create false identities.
Yeah.
So, but if I'm an attacker and I want to execute such a deepfake, or maybe I'm just working in the entertainment industry, I want to make a movie. How does this work?
Well,
where to start?
It starts very simply by just finding a tool online. There are both companies already offering real-time generative AI services, but there are also just standalone tools where you can upload a quick clip of somebody's face, or even just static images that will then go on to generate live feeds of that face filtered over your own. There's actually one tool out right now called Deep Live Cam, which already does this. You can provide it as provided with just a single static picture, and then it can deepfake your own face and then provide that deepfaked video as a video input source again that you can use for like a Zoom call.
Yeah, so I can go in a Zoom call pretending that I'm you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have to, after this recording, I have to take a picture of you. That's enough, and then that sounds cool. But that also means it's widely accessible. It also indicates a bit that the resources are not that heavy anymore. So can we run it on a laptop, or do we still need a big video card? Or
that depends. Still, the ecosystem of required drivers to perform that kind of fast-paced generative AI still varies quite a lot. But if you have a decently powered video card in your PC, you could definitely already do this right now.
Do you have an indication on how recent that video card should be? Is that last year or 4 or 5 years ago? What? If I want to do it real time, I want to pretend to be you in a Zoom meeting. What kind of hardware would you recommend? We would be talking about like either a current or last gen video card from most likely NVIDIA.
But it used to be that you would need like a data center video card to be able to perform these kinds of actions, but that is no longer the case.
So it's really consumer grade hardware nowadays.
Yeah.
And you should be able to pull off a real time deepfake with video and audio.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a bit scary.
It is. Yes, it is.
And this is really, we're talking now about real time, but I guess you can also do this as a post edit. So I record a video and then say to the program, I want your face on my face, just create it.
Yeah.
And then the hardware requirements are lower, but then the time increases. Is it that simple?
It is that simple, yeah. The quality of a deepfake doesn't really matter on the amount of compute that you have. It really just depends on the input of your data, of your model. With underpowered cards, it would just take longer to generate those deepfakes, but it wouldn't necessarily reduce the quality of them.
Okay, and are there any requirements? So again, like I want to impersonate you in a Zoom meeting. I need to have a picture of you. Are there any requirements on what that picture should have? So does it help, for example, if it has a plain background, or is the generative AI capable of figure that out itself?
That also depends, but you got to remind yourself that if you have a picture of somebody's face, not only are there already regular machine learning models, not even giant LLMs or related, that can already isolate your face from the picture without impacting the background. If you're doing a precompiled deepfake, you can take as much time as you want to fine-tune the image in Photoshop before you put it into your deepfake generator.
Yeah, you have even now these tools on your mobile phone. You take a picture and then you say, okay, but I want to remove this from the background or make it blurry.
Yeah.
Okay.
In theory, you could go out with your phone, just walk around the street, take pictures of one specific person, take them home, edit them down to be nice and clean, and then create a deepfake for that random person that you found on the street.
That's really scary. So that brings me also to the next part. How are we going to defend against this? Because
that is a very good question. Currently, there aren't many or at all security measures around this. It's kind of in the same trend as phishing, where a large part of it can only be mitigated by awareness of these attacks being out there. But unless you have a very strict system of proving identity during online meetings and such, it's very, very hard to protect against these kinds of attacks.
Okay, and so such verification, that would be like you and me setting up, saying in person, this is our password. Yeah. I join the meeting and then I ask you, what is the password that we have agreed upon? That would be kind of a check that we could do.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of the old movies where you had people hiding in a cabin and then knock on the door.
What's the password?
What is the sequence? Yeah. And otherwise you cannot get in.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's hard to implement. Because it relies on people exchanging these verification steps, but also be aware that they need to ask for verification if somebody joins a meeting or calls.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have had loads of Zoom meetings, I imagine. How many times have you asked the people on the other side of the Zoom meeting to prove their own identity, either with or without a video camera?
And never. So you assume that if somebody joins, that is the person that you invited. And okay, that's a bit scary. Maybe I need to think about how I'm going to do this in future stage, especially if it is this accessible for everyone.
Yeah.
So that also, because I think we're already at a scary moment in time then when talking about deepfakes and not having good countermeasures. What will the future then look like?
Well, so far there haven't been many widespread attacks using deepfake.
Do you have an idea why that is? Why?
I think that the threat actors just haven't caught on to it. I always feel like the current state of the industry at large is a kind of like a future warning to how threat actors might react later. Because the moment when ChatGPT kicked off, we didn't suddenly start to see loads of AI-generated, very realistic emails being used in phishing campaigns, regular mail phishing campaigns. But now we are starting to see that more and more. And I think deepfaking is going to follow the same suit, where now that the industry is really picking up generative AI and also generative video AI, Think about the models like Sora or I believe DALL-E was a very early precursor of that. Now that is very much established in the corporate world, where we should start seeing these deepfake attacks being used more often by real-world threat actors.
Okay, yeah, that's okay, but that's also for you mentioned phishing already a couple of times. So for phishing itself, we don't have a really good answer. We try to filter out the email that looks like phishing.
Yeah.
We try to do some awareness campaigns to prevent clicking, but the actual protection is what happens if a person clicks. That should not follow by an accident. That should be blocked.
Yeah.
If the link is going to a known malware site or something else, that should be blocked. I think we're heading a bit in the same direction for deepfakes then.
I think so as well. To use that example I used earlier about the company being extorted out of a lot of money, is that was purely because the decision to do the wire transfer of those 200,000 euros was done purely after a voice call, just a regular phone call. And I think what we're going to start seeing is that when decisions need to be made like that, they shouldn't only rely on one source of communication. You should have basically multi-factor authentication done on regular actions by either sending an email to confirm or use your company's messaging software.
For principle that two people have to agree. We talked about this before, but not in the context of deepfakes. But that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
We since COVID and nowadays quite normal, we started to work more remotely. Does that have an effect on the possible impact of deepfakes?
It definitely does. I mean, deepfakes are almost entirely mitigated if you're just meeting face to face. I have yet to see somebody do a Mission Impossible style method of faking somebody's actual face in person. But yeah, I mean, with Zoom meetings, like I said, I can just deepfake my face into somebody else's and then provide that video feed as my webcam source during a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or whatever. And then trick everybody in that meeting that I'm actually somebody else.
Yeah, and I can also imagine that still AI has a really steep curve in evolving and getting better. We see more and more hardware that's capable of doing this parallel processing.
Yeah,
it's getting also cheaper because more and more hardware can do this. So I can imagine we will only see more and more of these deepfakes, whether it's in the good sense or the bad sense. We're talking mainly about the bad actors here. So what can organizations do? We already talked a bit about awareness. So are there other things that they can do?
Well, yeah, apart from awareness and maybe like an identity challenge during Zoom meetings or voice calls or related, there isn't much you could do.
There's not yet the tooling or something that can be used to...
I have not. Well, there are deepfake detectors, but those don't really work reliably. They're comparable to ChatGPT detectors. They just don't work reliably enough as long as the output of your deepfaking model is strong enough.
Yeah, and it will always be a cat and mouse game, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, well, maybe not
it's not
the message I hoped for, but
no, it's not
I can imagine because we have the same problem with phishing. And this is really getting harder now with the deepfakes.
Yeah.
So I think for all the organizations and listeners out there, so raise awareness that this is really a capability that is available for almost everyone nowadays. So if you want to put it in the effort, you have, well, maybe a decent CPU or GPU, you can pull this off. Yeah. So it's really important to take some additional steps, do some extra verification, especially if it comes to money transfers. Yeah. We heard of them too many that went sideways because there was no extra check involved. Yeah. So with that, I would like to thank you, Yuri, for this information. I hope we have a next time a session where we can say, okay, we have now tooling that we can really defend against these deepfakes.
I'm looking forward to modern XDR applications to be able to detect deepfaking.
That would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Thank for your attendance and your information. Thank you, listener, for watching this episode of Threat Talks, the deep dives on deepfakes. I hope you like what you have saw. If that's the case, please like and subscribe. And go to threatdesktalks.com if you want to have more information on this subject. For now, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Onto It Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.